We got our hands washed. We got our phone wiped down because remember, this thing carries so many germs. Every time you wash your hands, wipe down your phone as well. And do your own research because that is the key. Information and vigilance, which is very different from hysteria. And that is what this video is not. So in terms of individual response, I've seen a lot of people step up and really show that vigilance, and that's awesome. But in terms of the state's response and the city's response, it has been totally lacking. To get worried, and you can't buy hand sanitizer anywhere. So I'm like hoarding my bottle of hand sanitizer and trying to figure out what to do. Hello, all those beautiful faces. How we doing? Stephanie checking in with another episode of Class Disruption, disrupting the status quo of education. And before we get into today's video, as of right now, I have 41 subscribers. So I just want to stop and give each and every one of you a super special shout out. Thank you so much for subscribing, for watching, for liking, for sharing, for commenting, because that's what this is all about. That's why I do this every single week for you. You keep me going. You keep me inspired, right? Because that's what this is all about. It's a conversation. It's creating a community of teachers and taking that power back. So stay foolish and keep disrupting, y'all. All right? And we're going to keep it coming each and every week, I promise. So let's get into today's video. Coronavirus. Okay, so now we got our hands washed. We got our phone wiped down because remember, this thing carries so many germs. Every time you wash your hands, wipe down your phone as well. And remember, this video is my opinion. I've done research. I'm providing my sources in the description down below. We're going to be going through some of the things that I found most helpful or had to have a good chunk of information, going over the updates as they specifically pertain to New York. And again, mixing it in with my own opinion. So take it for what it is and do your own research because that is the key. Information and vigilance, which is very different from hysteria. And that is what this video is not. It is not to spread hysteria. It is all about providing information and encouraging people to be vigilant, right? Wash those hands, wash your phone. Be aware of, if you cough or you sneeze, into the elbow, not onto the hands. If you have to blow your nose, excuse yourself out into a different room and make sure you throw that tissue right away. Because vigilance is how we are going to stop spreading these things. Especially, me, our students often are not at high risk. We may contract it and it might be like a cold. And in fact, that seems what the vast majority of cases are. But for people who are older or people who do have preconditions, respiratory conditions, they are at a higher risk and we need to protect them, our loved ones. So be vigilant. But as for, a larger response, I do not think at this time, even with New York declaring a state of emergency, that it's necessary to shut everything down. Do I think that we need to think about, okay, are we going out into crowds, especially if you're an older person or if you're a person who is, susceptible more to it? You should be even extra vigilant about where you go. But for example, I had my son's birthday party today and we just made sure everybody, when they came, washed their hands. After they did the trampolines, wash the hands, Purell, before we eat, after we eat, always washing the hands. So in terms of individual response, I've seen a lot of people step up and really show that vigilance, and that's awesome. But in terms of the state's response and the city's response, it has been totally lacking. Right? Today, March 7th, New York State did declare a state of emergency, but we've known this thing is coming for a month, We've known about it longer than that, but really a month. It's been like, okay, this thing has the potential to spread. And we're New York City, largest city in the country, largest school system in the country, a hub of finance, of travel, people in and out. And what did we do? We sat around and we didn't do anything. And so that's what I'm going to bring you through, kind of that step by step of my experience in New York City, the memos that have gone out, the stories that I've heard, and again, my opinion on that response. So why don't we start, and also actually the non-response of the UFT. They always want to send me text message and emails about this and that, but not heard a word about protecting the people who they're supposed to be protecting, their workers, their teachers, from this virus. Not a word. And so let's start with on 3/28. We're going to check out an email that we received to our DOE emails from the DOE on February 26th at 7:05 p.m. And at this point, we had been back from our midwinter break for 5 days. And I know students, I know teachers who, had gone various places in the country, who had left the country, who had gone to Europe, who had been to Italy. And so this is on 2/26, and you'll see in here, it talks a lot about China, but by this point, it's spread to other places. And it's not really addressing that. So it seems outdated already to me in my head when I'm reading this. And so it goes, let's just go through some of the things. It says, "Dear DOE colleagues, this week the Center for Disease Control and Prevention discussed possible options for what could happen if there is a local person-to-person transmission of the novel coronavirus in the United States, including recommendations for school systems to consider. At this time, it's important to listen to facts and not respond to fear. Currently, there are no confirmed cases of novel coronavirus in New York City, and the risk to New Yorkers remains low," which we know at this time, the last update I saw, I think it was 84 or 89 people, we're going to see the headline in a second, have transmitted it or have been infected with this. And there's a number of people across the United States who have also died. So we can see how quickly, 1 week later, and we went from the possibility to it's actually spreading. And we don't even know how much, right? 89 cases that we know of. And so it says, we should continue to practice general flu prevention measures, cover your cough, your sneeze, wash your hands, avoid touching your face, avoid close contact with people who are sick, get your flu shot, which it's not going to stop coronavirus, but it's the middle of flu season, so we don't want to confound or compound those issues with people who also have the flu. And then they gave this coronavirus FAQ right here, which again, it goes through a lot of the information that we're going to touch on in this video, but just explaining what it is, saying that it's been ranged from mild to severe, talks about how it spreads, that you should go into a 14-day incubation period if you've been to somewhere outside the country, especially somewhere that has had the coronavirus there. And then it goes say that has like flu-like symptoms, and it talks mostly about China, mainland China, if you've been to mainland China. And again, like I said, I know somebody who had been to Italy, came back and was working in the schools. And so this information just seemed updated. I'm like thinking about, what about her? Like, should we be worried? And what's crazy is she told me that she was like, "Oh, I called the UFT. The UFT didn't know what to do. They were like, oh, call 311, which is the local help hotline. Like, it's not 911, it's if you need other services." So she called 311, and 311 passed her off to this person. They passed her, and at the end of the day, she was like, "Well, should I go to the hospital?" And nobody had an answer for her. And like, thankfully, it's been 14 days, and she has not shown any signs of being sick, and nobody in her family has, and it doesn't seem to have spread that way. But it's just kind of scary that this person was outside the country in a place where it's now spreading very badly in Italy, and just nonchalantly, "Oh, call this person, So that memo came out it was a Friday, 2/26, and then so we have the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and over that 5-day period, there's misinformation, there's worry, there's fear spreading like crazy. Like my group chat was going crazy. There was fake articles going up on social media. I'll post that right there for you to check out. And so everybody's kind of worried, and we're waiting. We're like, all right, I'm sure our admin will say something to us. I'm sure the DOE will send another email. I'm sure the UFT, they're about to send us something, and still it's nothing. And so I go into school on Thursday and I start kind of like asking around. I ask one of our secretaries, and she's like, oh, you should bring that up with administration, because I know that sometimes the secretaries kind of have the inside word about what the admin are going to do, or some email or some all school thing they're going to do. And she's like, no, you should go talk to them about that. And so I approached my AP and I'm like, hey, so what's our deal? What kind of precautions should we take? How should we present this to the kids? And they were like, oh, that's a good question. I'll bring that up with the principal. And I was like, all right, well, like the responsible thing to do is, mention it to them, right? Talk to them about it. Make sure that they're not spreading misinformation. Make sure they're washing their hands. Make sure they're not, dapping each other up and all over each other in the hallway, right? And they were like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. You should do that. And so again, it was just a little disconcerting that it seemed like nobody knew how we were approaching this. And the fear is just building up and building up and building up. And I would consider myself a person who doesn't allow these things to really, kick up to that level, but I'm starting to get worried. And you can't buy hand sanitizer anywhere. So I'm like hoarding my bottle of hand sanitizer and trying to figure out what to do. So right after I did that, and I don't know whether it was already something they had planned or whether it was like, hey, teachers are bringing this up and we need to do something, whether it was done by the DOE or my administration, but we got this letter from the New York Department of Health. Get that right nice and close for you guys. I don't know if you could see that. I'll take a picture of it, maybe post it up here. I was looking for it online. I couldn't find it. But this... Also, the thing is, it's dated February 26th. So I'm like, all right, well, this is already over a week old. And it basically says what they told us in that email before. So it doesn't have a lot of updated information, just reminding you to cover your cough, talking about quarantines. If you know somebody who's, been outside the U.S., it doesn't talk specifically about China like it did in the last one. It's more general, but none of the actual information in here goes beyond what we had before, and none of it is specific to schools. I'm thinking like, why hasn't the DOE, the DOE should be making sure that all schools have soap available, all schools have Purell, at least not, if not in every classroom, widely available, because you cannot get hand sanitizer anywhere. And I know, at least in the kids' bathroom, sometimes in our bathroom, by the end of the day, the soap starts running out. And so just really making sure that, we should say something. And it just did not seem like there was a unified way to approach this, or anybody really had an action plan put in place. Or if there was an action plan, which I was looking online, and Karan's one day said that they didn't have an action plan, and the next day he's like, oh yeah, we have a contingency plan for if we need to do remote learning. So it doesn't seem like they have it together. And finally, today, New York State declared a state of emergency. So let's go ahead and check out that article. And even though it's a state of emergency, again, a state of emergency doesn't mean we should all panic. A state of emergency is simply a mechanism that the governor can use to release funds that would not otherwise be available, and services that would not otherwise be available if we were not in that state of emergency. It's kind of like an extraordinary use of state, I don't know if I want to say if it's powers, but definitely state funds and finance measures that they can do. So let's just check out this article, see what the latest updates are on that, and then I want to share with you guys an article and a video that I found very helpful for understanding what coronavirus is on kind of like a deeper molecular biological level. I can't even say it. It's it's pretty complicated, but the video I found, it breaks it down a lot. And then also an article that kind of compares the coronavirus to, I don't know if any of you guys recall in 2009 how we had the swine flu H1N1 outbreak, and how it's similar and how it's different, how we can learn from that experience. So let's go ahead and take a look at those things right now. All right, so right here we got coronavirus update. New York state of emergency declared as outbreak jumps to 89 cases. See, I knew I was like 84 and 89. I didn't want to overstate it, but it's 89. And that's just real quick. Last week it was 2 people, and a few days later, now 89. And it says 11 of those confirmed cases are in New York City. The majority of the cases are in Westchester County, which, if you know anything about New York geography, New York City and Westchester County, they're right there. In fact, we have many teachers drive in from Westchester every single day to teach in the Bronx, Manhattan, all over the city. So it's back and forth. Mayor Bill de Blasio said 7 new cases were in the city were confirmed Saturday morning. So that's the morning that I'm recording this video. It's just going up. We're seeing more community transmission between people who have no direct connection to travel to one of the affected countries. I urge New Yorkers to remain vigilant, not alarmed, and take necessary precautions to protect themselves and their loved ones. So again, just to restate that line right there, right? Vigilant, not alarmed. And that's what the key is here, because we can see how quickly it is able to transmit, even if you're not having direct contact. 7 of the 11 cases include the wife and 11-year-old daughter of an Upper West Side man who had previously tested positive, 2 Brooklyn women who were recently on a cruise, a Brooklyn man who returned from Italy. Okay, so we can see some of these people have connections to travel, but they're saying there's other cases who don't. Let's keep going. All right, here we go to the public schools. This is what I'm really interested in. Officials also said that 3 New York City public school teachers who had recently traveled to Italy all tested negative for the coronavirus. All right, so thankfully, the people who came over from Italy, and I'm pretty sure that's not the person who I had spoken to about this issue, because she said nobody did anything for her. So at least they were on some people. I don't know who they talked to, who she wasn't able to, but thankfully they all tested negative. All right, so if you scroll down here a little bit, and he says right here, and this goes back to the point that I made from the very beginning of the video about New York City being unprepared and not taking the proper precautions. It says, if you had said day 1, everyone in New Rochelle must stay in their home, it could have reduced the rate. He said, mandatory quarantine for everyone. That's easier to do in China, but it would be tremendously disruptive to the economy. But there's no doubt massive quarantine would be the best way to slow the spread. Now, again, I'm not a public official. I don't have experience or, the knowledge to think back to these other epidemics to say what the proper response is. But again, a quote like this basically just admits that the government was not prepared and did not take the proper protocol to try to reduce this from the very beginning. It goes over in Westchester all the things that kind of happen. It says Westchester Day School, a private independent village of Mamaroneck, say student tested positive for coronavirus. In White Plains, the Maple Medical Group at 30 Davis Avenue is closed to be cleaned and disinfected. I know that there was a school in Mount Vernon that closed. I know a couple schools in New Rochelle also closed. So there's a lot of schools, again, that are now kind of doing these reactive measures because nobody had plans in place. They just listened to it, and it's like we didn't think it was coming here. And I just want to repeat, like this article has right here, that just because we're in a state of emergency, yes, you should heighten your vigilance, but it's not about fear-mongering. It's because the state of emergency all means that we can have federal and state resources that we might not otherwise have. It means that qualified professionals other than doctors and nurses will be able to administer coronavirus testing kits. So also the state of emergency means on Long Island, Northwell Health is now getting the green light to test people as infected patients are quarantined, both at Mercy Medical Center and NYU Winthrop Hospital. The Commissioner of Nassau County Office and Emergency Management says they plan to start a soft activation Sunday, which they do when there are terrorist threats or major weather events. It's a central location for everyone to meet and get help and resources that they need. We'll also be fielding information from local hospitals so they can let us know should their census begin to increase, that their emergency rooms are starting to fill up with people saying they're not feeling well. Cuomo again reiterated 80% of those infected will self-resolve, 20% may get ill and may require hospitalization, and it's most problematic for senior citizens, people with underlying conditions, or compromised immune systems. Health officials emphasized the illness was airborne and could only be transmitted through fluids. City officials also believe the virus can only live on most household surfaces for a few minutes. The governor added New York health officials are looking at responses in China since the outbreak began there, including the use of telemedicine to diagnose and help patients without them leaving their homes. Okay, so it seems like we are getting it together, but again, this should have been something that was already put in place. People should have been having these emails out weeks ago. We should have known these were the protocols. We should have Purell and soap in every classroom. We should have been educating the kids on this already. All right, so now what I want to do is I kind of want to switch out from my opinion about New York and New York City's response and the public schools' response to the virus and to more factual information things. So while on the one hand, there are people who are, spreading more fear, misinformation, there's also a group of people who are total opposite of the spectrum, telling people, oh, it's not a big deal, it's just like the flu, don't worry, people overreacting. And while part of me wants to be in that group, I also want to be vigilant. And I think there are some very important differences that we need to recognize between the flu, which we know a lot about, and this novel coronavirus, which we really don't know a lot about. So I'm going to bring you through this article here. How does the new coronavirus compare with the flu? And bring up some of those big points and some of the things that we just really need to be aware of, why this could potentially be different. Again, potentially. We're still at the place kind of in between, but we need to be vigilant and we need to be ready. So it says, which is more worrisome? The new coronavirus outbreak, which made headlines in recent weeks, but there's another viral epidemic hitting countries around the world, flu season. But how does the virus compare, and which one is really more worrisome? So far, the new coronavirus has led to more than 100,000 illnesses and more than 3,000 deaths worldwide. But that's nothing compared with the flu, also called influenza. In the U.S. alone, the flu caused an estimated 32 million illnesses, 310,000 hospitalizations, and 18,000 deaths this flu season, according to the CDC. Okay, so we can see that's a lot. And we don't think about that. It's not something the news follows and reports. So again, oftentimes the things that the news reports, it puts a spotlight on it and it makes it seem like it's this big deal when we also need to think, okay, comparatively, what else is a big deal? But here's kind of the caveat. That said, scientists have studied seasonal flu for decades, so despite the danger of it, we know a lot about flu viruses, what to expect each season. In contrast, very little is known about the new coronavirus and the disease it causes, dubbed COVID-19 because it's so new. This means COVID-19 is something of a wild card in terms of how far it was spread and how many deaths it will cause. And that's the big key here, is we can kind of predict every year how to handle it. We have the flu vaccine, so that helps protect a lot of people. This is new. We don't know how to accept. We don't know how far it will spread. And from what it seems so far, it seems to spread faster than the flu, or more easily than the flu. So it says scientists are racing to find out more about COVID-19 and our understanding of the virus that causes it and the threat it may pose. And the threat it poses may change as new information becomes available. But this is what we know so far. Both seasonal flu viruses, influenza A and B, and COVID-19 are contagious viruses that cause respiratory illnesses. So then it goes through, typical flu symptoms, which you all know: fever, sore throat, muscle aches, headaches, runny nose, fatigue, vomiting, diarrhea, and it could, in a bad case, lead to pneumonia. But so far this season, only about 1% of people in the United States have developed symptoms severe enough to be hospitalized, which is similar to the rate year after year. But with COVID-19, doctors are still trying to understand the full picture of the disease, the symptoms, and the severity. Reported symptoms in patients have varied from mild to severe and can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. And then it kind of goes through the statistics so far of what we have and what we do know from mild to severity. So check that out if you're interested in those specific numbers. And then it goes on to death rate. And so it says the death rate from seasonal flu is typically around 0.1% in the US. And so far, again, from what we know, the death rate of COVID-19 appears to be higher. Now, these numbers can be confounded by the fact that we just haven't tested a lot of people, or sometimes people who come down with it might not even know it. So as we do get to test more people, it is expected that that number will come down. But so far, from places that have had it more, so China and also in South Korea, it does seem like that rate is still a little bit higher than your typical influenza. And also it says that it varies from place to place. Again, that's got to be according to the data and our ability to collect that information. And then it goes on to virus transmission. The measure scientists use to determine how easily a virus spread is known as basic reproduction number, or RO, or pronounced R not. This is an estimate of average number of people who can catch the virus from a single infected person. The flu has an R0 value of 1.3. Researchers are still working to determine the R0 for COVID-19, but preliminary studies have estimated the R0 value for the new coronavirus to be between 2 and 3%. This means each infected person has spread the virus to an average of 2 to 3 people, which you can see is significantly higher than what we normally see from the flu, and which I think is why we're also seeing it spread so rapidly. And then it just ends off with more information about pandemics and, again, reinforcing that prevention. And I can't say it enough. Matter of fact, I'm gonna stop right now and go wash my hands touching this computer. All right, you know me, I have allergies, so like that itch to touch my face sometimes is just so overwhelming. So I'll go wash my hands, do what I gotta do, wash them again, and now I'm back. All right, so thank you for bearing with me in that. I want to go over one more thing. This video, it was a little above my head, but at the same time, I still think it's cool to go through the underlying factors, that molecular, biological aspect of it. So I just want to show you a couple minutes of a video I found very informative. He has a whole series of videos. I'm going to put them in the description down below, so check those out for yourself. But I'm just going to play a couple minutes for us to look at together so you can see what I'm talking about, kind of really understanding, because the more we know, the easier it is to ward off that fear, to prevent that craziness that often comes along with things like this.
Viral genome. And so you can see here that this RNA replicase is going to be making more and more RNAs so that they can package these into new virons that this cell is going to be making so it can make more virus. And now the part that really blows me away, when this RNA-dependent RNA polymerase starts to go back on again, and it starts to do this, sometimes it doesn't reach right at the end. Sometimes it reaches from here and will only copy this part. And so you'll get a shorter RNA. Or it'll come from this side here and it'll get a shorter RNA. Well, when you get these shorter RNAs, these are known as subgenomic RNAs, or sgRNAs. And some of them are positive, and of course some of them are going to be negative because they're complementary.
All right, so you can see he gets pretty complex, but if you watch the whole video from when he starts the drawing and really defines his terms and gives you a reminder of what's RNA and DNA and transcription and all those things that you forgot from high school biology, unless you were one of those smart people who took biology in college, not me. And again, the more that you know, even if I can't fully take that into a conversation and tell somebody else about it, I know for myself, understand how it works and how he gives some tips at the end also just about being in good health. The stronger your immune system is, the harder it is for this virus to get in you and start that replication process that he was explaining in that video for the couple of, the minute that I watched it with you guys. All right. So that's what I have to do with this video. Again, remember, this is my opinion on how New York City and the New York City public schools have handled this. I tried to make it informative, but again, do your research. And most of all, wash your hands. Try not to touch your face, and try not to just be overly touchy with people or in places where a lot of people are touching. Be vigilant. That's what it's all about. It's up to you and it's up to me to make sure that A, we're not spreading this disease, and B, we're not spreading fear. All right? So stay vigilant, stay informed. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button if you like this video, and stay foolish, y'all.